My name is Margaret Collins, and I was 72 the night my own daughter told me I would eat after everyone else. She said it so casually, her voice clipped and sharp, as though I were the hired help instead of the woman who had raised her. I stood there in her dining room, the smell of roasted beef filling the air, children laughing in the background, and something inside me cracked so cleanly it almost felt like silence breaking. I had spent the entire day marinating that roast, tending it in her oven while she arranged flowers and scrolled on her phone. I basted the meat, checked the temperature, made sure it came out glistening and tender, and now, as the family gathered at the table, she dismissed me with one sentence, as if decades of my care could be swept aside. I looked at the steaming tray resting on the counter, then at the row of faces already lifting forks. No one protested. No one even paused. My daughter's husband adjusted his napkin. The children fought over roles. And Linda, my Linda, leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile, confident her word was final. I picked up the tray. The heat burned faintly through the foil, but I held it steady. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I walked past the table, past the coats hanging by the door, and stepped out into the cold night. Behind me, the scrape of forks against porcelain carried on without interruption. Not a gasp, not even a whisper. Just life moving on, as though I were invisible. The November air cut sharp against my face, steadier than my own breath. I walked down the street with that roast in my arms like it was the last piece of dignity I still owned. And when I reached my house, my real house, the one my name was still written on, I set the tray down on the counter and whispered into the quiet, "This is mine, and I am not done yet." The house greeted me with the faint scent of lemon soap and the hush of rooms that hadn't heard laughter in too long. I set the roast on the counter and let the silence wrap around me. It was startling at first, the absence of voices demanding to know where the salt was or why the potatoes weren't creamy enough. For once, there was no one to correct me, no one to sigh when I moved too slowly. I reached for one of my old plates, the kind with blue flowers fading along the rim, a chip at the edge from years of use. I cut a thick slice of the roast, drizzled the pan juices across it, and sat down at my kitchen table. The chair creaked as I lowered myself. The clock ticked lazily above the window, and I ate, slowly, deliberately. Every bite tasted of rosemary and garlic, tender and rich, as if the meat itself was reminding me that I still had the ability to create something worthy. I couldn't remember the last time I had truly tasted my own cooking. Meals had become performances for Linda's guests or hurried obligations in her bustling kitchen. Tonight, though, every flavor belonged to me. The roast didn't ask for applause, and it didn't ignore me either. It simply fed me. When the plate was clean, I washed it, dried it carefully, and slid it back into the cabinet. That small act felt strangely defiant, like reclaiming a rhythm I thought I'd lost. Then I sat by the window, looking out at the maple trees bending in the wind. Their leaves had turned the color of rust, and I remembered how Linda had once told me not to rake them anymore. Too dangerous, too unnecessary. But as I stared into the night, I knew danger wasn't in raking leaves. It was in letting someone else decide what pieces of my life were still mine. The longer I sat by the window, the more her words echoed inside me. You'll eat after everyone else. It wasn't just about that night. It was the last stone in a wall Linda had been building for years, one command after another, spoken like advice but cutting like orders. She had always been sharp, always certain she knew best, and I had let her certainty eclipse my own voice. I thought about my other daughter, Grace. She'd been gone 10 years. Yet I could still hear the gentleness in her voice when she brought me tea during my worst days of arthritis, or when she called late at night, just to check if I'd locked the doors. Grace never told me what to do. She asked. She offered. She carried warmth in her hands the way her sister carried control in her tone. When cancer took her, the house dimmed, and something inside me dimmed with it. But Grace left behind her daughter, Emily, my sweet granddaughter, now grown, steady-eyed and thoughtful in ways that reminded me so much of her mother. I hadn't seen her as much since Linda became the one to manage family gatherings, but I knew Emily. She saw things. She noticed what others ignored. I wondered what she would have thought if she had watched me walk out of that house with the roast. I imagined she might have smiled, proud that her grandmother still had the strength to leave when dignity was denied. As the night deepened, I pressed my palm against the glass and whispered Grace's name, a promise that I would not let myself vanish into obedience. The next morning, I knew I couldn't just sit in silence anymore. I needed to act, to put my life back into my own hands. Morning light crept through the curtains, soft and pale, and I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a notepad. The list formed slowly, my handwriting shaky but steady enough. Check the bank, call the lawyer, review the house papers. Simple words, but each one felt like a step back toward myself. For years I had told myself that letting Linda handle the bills was practical, that she was more comfortable with online accounts. But practicality, I realized, was just another word for surrender. I pulled my old laptop from the shelf, brushed off a thin layer of dust, and pressed the power button. The screen flickered awake with a hum. My stomach tightened as I clicked on the bank's website, half afraid I would find an empty balance or discover that I no longer had access at all. My fingers trembled when I typed in the password I'd once trusted Linda with. Rejected. I took a breath, clicked Forgot Password, and followed the steps. Security questions, my first pet's name, the street where I grew up, answers Linda could never guess. Relief washed over me as the screen opened and numbers appeared. The money was still there, every cent of it, untouched. Mine. I leaned back in the chair, my chest rising with a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For the first time in years, I felt more than just old and tolerated. I felt capable. I scribbled another line on the list. Visit the branch in person. No more blind trust. No more convenience at the expense of control. I closed the laptop and looked around my quiet kitchen. The house seemed to be listening, waiting. I thought of Emily then, of her clear, steady eyes. If anyone would understand what I was doing, it would be her. And I knew I needed to hear her voice. I dialed Emily's number from memory, the digits etched in my mind like an old hymn. The line rang twice before her voice came through, warm and certain. "Grandma, are you okay?" The sound of her concern loosened something inside me, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Then the words tumbled out, quiet but steady. I left. Emily, I took the roast and I walked out. There was a pause, but not a judgmental one, just a silence that gave space. Then she let out a small laugh, soft and approving. Good for you. My throat tightened as I whispered, "Would you like to come by tomorrow? Nothing fancy. Just lunch." She didn't hesitate. Tomorrow would be perfect. When she arrived the next day, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold, she carried a paper bag from the bakery near the bookstore I used to love. "Cinnamon twists?" she said with a grin. "Still your favorite?" I almost laughed. "Always." We sat at my kitchen table, the scent of sugar and spice filling the air, and ate slowly, as though neither of us wanted to rush the moment. At last she reached into her bag again and pulled out a small set of keys. "I made copies," she said, "for emergencies, but also so I can come whenever you want, if that's okay." She slid them across the table, and I felt the weight of them in my palm, heavier than they looked. "Do I get a say in the keychain?" I teased, and she smiled, her eyes bright. As the afternoon faded, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't alone. I wasn't forgotten. For the first time in a long while, I felt chosen. The next morning, I dressed with more care than usual, slipping into a navy sweater and pinning back my hair with the silver clip Grace once said made me look sharp. I wanted to walk into the bank not as someone's frail mother, but as myself. The bus ride downtown was quiet, the windows fogged with cold, and I found myself rehearsing what I would say, determined not to falter. Inside, the bank smelled faintly of polished wood and carpet cleaner. A young man at the counter glanced up as I handed him my ID. "Good morning, Mrs. Collins. How can I help you?" His voice carried that polite, almost patronizing tone reserved for older women, but I met his eyes squarely. "I need to remove an authorized user from my accounts," I said. "Today?" His brows lifted, surprised but not resistant. Within minutes, I was seated at a small desk, the glow of a computer screen reflecting in his glasses. He printed out the forms, sliding them toward me with a pen. My heart thudded as I scanned the lines. Revoke online access, cancel automatic transfers, restore single ownership. Every box ticked was another piece of myself returned. When I signed my name across the bottom, my hand did not shake. The pen moved smoothly, leaving a trail of ink that felt like a declaration. I am still here. The banker glanced up. "Would you like us to flag your account in case anyone tries to regain access?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, flag it." When I walked back outside, the winter air bit against my face, but it didn't feel sharp anymore. It felt bracing, like a wind at my back. I clutched my bag tighter, knowing this was only the beginning. The next step would take me deeper, into places Linda couldn't touch. Legal ground. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. I hadn't been there in years, not since Walter and I first drafted our wills after his heart scare. The receptionist guided me down a narrow hallway to a small office where Mr. Reynolds, older now, stood to greet me. His handshake was firm, his eyes patient. "Mrs. Collins, it's been some time. What brings you in today?" I sat down, smoothing the edge of my sweater. "I need to make changes," I said. "To my will, to everything." "Really?" His pen hovered over a legal pad. "All right. Tell me what you'd like." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I want to set up a trust for my granddaughter, Emily. Everything I own, the house, the accounts, whatever is left, should go to her, not to Linda, not ever." He nodded, unflinching. "We can do that. You'll remain the trustee while you're alive, and Emily will inherit directly without probate. It's straightforward." As he wrote, he glanced up. "May I ask what prompted this change?" I hesitated only a breath. "She told me to eat after everyone else." The words hung in the air, heavier than I expected. He didn't press for details. He simply nodded, understanding that sometimes a single sentence can fracture a lifetime. We discussed documents, contingencies, revoking any power of attorney Linda still held. Each step felt like pulling threads from a net I hadn't realized was binding me. When we finished, he gathered the papers into a folder. "Once these are signed and filed, it will all be yours again," he said quietly. Walking out into the fading afternoon light, I felt taller somehow, as if my spine had remembered its own strength. But I also knew Linda would not let go without a fight. It didn't take long for Linda to show up. I saw her car pull into the driveway just as the sun dipped low, her figure stiff as she climbed the porch steps. When I opened the door, she stood there holding a foil-covered dish. Her smile was brittle, her voice too bright. "I brought back your Tupperware. There's some turkey left, too." I didn't reach for it. "I have food," I said. Her smile faltered. She shifted the dish in her hands, then tried again. "Mom, I know things got tense. You have to understand. There were guests, expectations. You weren't worried about being respectful?" I interrupted softly. "You just didn't care if you were—" Her jaw tightened. She brushed past me into the living room, setting the dish down on the coffee table as though the house still belonged to her. "Why now?" she demanded, turning to face me. "Why after all this time? You lived under my roof for a year, and suddenly I'm the villain." I sank into my chair by the window, calm in a way that startled even me. "I don't live under your roof anymore." "We took care of you," she snapped. "No," I said evenly. "I cooked. I cleaned. I watched your children, paid half your bills. That wasn't care. That was arrangement. And I won't live in arrangements that erase me." For a moment her mouth opened, but no words came. She had expected guilt. Instead, she found clarity. "You're being dramatic," she muttered finally. "No," I said, my eyes steady on hers. "I'm being exact." The room fell quiet, the air heavy with truths we'd both avoided for years. At last she crossed her arms, defensive, wounded. "Do you want me to go?" I nodded. "Yes." The apartment wasn't grand, but it was mine. A second-floor walk-up overlooking a narrow street near the park, with windows that caught the morning light. When the landlord handed me the keys, I felt a rush of relief, as though the walls themselves whispered that I belonged. Emily helped me move in, carrying boxes up the stairs with the energy of youth. We unpacked slowly, sipping iced tea from mismatched mugs and laughing when we found things I hadn't seen in years. An old sewing box, a faded photograph of Grace, the silver brooch I thought I'd lost. Emily hung a small framed print above the sink, a lemon tree with soft yellow fruit. "It looks like you," she said, "rooted, but still growing." Shakart, that night, after she left, I sat on the couch and listened to the hum of the radiator. The silence was different here, not the silence of being dismissed, but the silence of freedom. I boiled a small pot of spinach, toasted bread, and ate slowly at the little kitchen table. No one complained about the lack of side dishes. No one judged the softness of the yolk. In the days that followed, I rearranged drawers simply because I could, placing forks in the front and knives at the back, even if it made no sense. I bought a potted fern for the windowsill and watched it stretch toward the light. I pulled out the sewing box, my fingers fumbling at first, then remembering the rhythm of needle and thread. Each act was small, but together they stitched me back into myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I was living on my own terms, and I intended to keep it that way. A week after I moved, a pale blue envelope appeared in my mailbox. Linda's handwriting was neat, slanted the way she used to impress teachers in school. Inside was a card with gold trim, polite but hollow. "Let's start fresh. Come for dinner this Sunday. Just family. Love, Linda." I read it twice, then set it on the counter. I didn't need to think. I already knew my answer. Sunday came, and instead of driving to her house, I roasted carrots and baked a small piece of fish in lemon and herbs. I set my table for one, the evening light spilling across the floorboards. At 7, the phone rang. Linda's voice came sharp, too steady. "You got the card?" "Yes. We waited for you." "I know. I made the lamb. Your recipe." "That's nice," I said, stirring my tea. Her breath crackled through the line. "Are you punishing me?" "No," I answered softly. "I'm declining." The silence on the other end was thick, broken only by the faint hum of her children in the background. "It's just dinner, Mom." "It's never just dinner with you," I said. "It's performance, hierarchy, a place I have to earn. I won't sit at a table where my presence is treated like a favor." Her voice cracked. "Rachel says you've changed." "She's right. I don't know what you want from me." "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." There was no anger in me, only clarity. Linda whispered, "I miss you." But I didn't fill the silence. When the call ended, I looked around my apartment, at the lemon tree print above the sink, the fern by the window, the simple dinner waiting on my plate. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting to be invited. I was already home. That night, after I set the phone back on the hook, I sat by the window with my tea growing cold in my hands. The city outside was alive, distant sirens, laughter drifting up from the street, the steady thrum of footsteps on pavement. For the first time in years, those sounds didn't make me feel small or forgotten. They made me feel connected, part of something larger than one dinner table, larger than one daughter's approval. I thought about all the years I'd measured my worth by the way Linda looked at me, by whether my roast was tender enough, my manners acceptable enough, my place at her table secure enough. How narrow that world had been, how fragile it crumbled the moment I stopped performing. And yet, here I was, still standing. Freedom did not come in a sweeping act of revenge or a dramatic confrontation. It came in quiet decisions, a walk out the door with a roast in my hands, the refusal of an invitation written in gold trim, the choice to eat fish and carrots alone rather than lamb in a room where love was rationed. I realized then that healing isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's about release. Sometimes it's about choosing your own silence over someone else's noise. I wasn't naive. I knew the ache of distance would linger. I still loved my daughter, but love without respect is a chain, not a bond. By letting go, I was not abandoning her. I was saving myself. I finished my tea, washed the cup, and placed it carefully on the drying rack. The fern by the window bent slightly toward the night air, and I smiled. My life was no longer waiting to be served after everyone else. It was mine to savor, fully, without apology. And that was enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.